websites. You can get the book at various places, and we'll talk about that afterwards. So, as Nat said, racism is vamping up in the world around us. Anti-blackness is more intense. Anti-black racism is more intense than you could ever imagine. And of course, there is all sorts of problems that's presented for the black community. But I want to present this book. Am I standing in the right place? I don't want to block anything. Yeah? So, well, if I'm standing there, I probably can do it myself. Probably can. So, the Racism Handbook for people classified as black. Okay? Here we go. So let me just read a little excerpt from the book for you, yeah? And then we'll get going on that. So, if you do not understand racism correctly, someone's talking, could you just keep that down a little bit, please? Because it's sort of bugging my ears as well. If you do not understand racism correctly, you do not understand yourself. The black self is constructed in the Eurocentric world in which you were born. This handbook will show that in this Western world, you were born into a global, interconnected system of racism, white domination, or supremacy. This is so whether you live in the UK, US, France, Germany, Africa, the Caribbean, or anywhere else on Earth. Moreover, it means that you were categorized at birth as a sub-person. Furthermore, it means that your psyche has been subjected to unrelenting psychopolitical violence from an early age. Fundamentally, this violence has disconnected you from your history, your black self. Thus, the purpose of this handbook is to help black people grasp the full meaning of this system, so as to understand the social, political, economic, cultural, and psychological nature of their existence as African people classified as black. So that's just an opening for you. So why is the Racism Handbook needed at this time? And really, I don't think I need to tell anybody in this room. Racism is totally ramping up. It was really easy to know that Donald Trump was going to be president again. Racism is reproducing itself. It doesn't really go away. All right, so there's a few stats there. Today, racial discrimination is rising in Europe. We know that. In the UK and the US. And if we look at the US landscape, we see that about 6 in 10 Americans say that race relations in the UK are bad. Sorry, the US are bad. Some 56% are convinced that the president, and when I wrote this was his first term. Because I think I set this up in 22. Has made race relations worse. Just 15% says he's improved race relations. Furthermore, roughly 2/3 say that it's become more common for people to express racist views. Since Trump became president. US relations totally impact UK relations. We know that. So, there is a reason here. Look at this bit, please. In Europe, we have the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights Commission paper, I don't know if you saw that, being black in the EU, reported continued racism widespread across Europe. That's Eastern and Western Europe. This is the reality for many people, the report said, in the EU today. Just because of the colour of their skin, many people of African descent are routinely met with unfair treatment and bias when seeking jobs or homes. Racial discrimination, harassment and violence continues to haunt the daily lives of people. These are not isolated incidents, but recurring experiences across all aspects of our lives. Let me just put my glasses on. I wondered why things were not working, because I've got glasses on. I keep thinking that I'm 30 years younger than I am, but I'm not. Right. Look at this bit, please, brothers and sisters. In the UK, remember this? In 2020, the government set up a commission on race relations and ethnic disparities. This was called the Credit Report. It established by the UK government after the Black Lives Matter social movement protests globally exploded in 2020. The document completely failed to acknowledge how the legacies of African enslavement continue to shape wealth inequalities and the life experiences of Black and African people in Britain. Also, it failed to acknowledge the racist discrimination in sections such as education, housing, income, police and healthcare, and of course the criminal justice system. So racism is vamping up as we speak. Overall, the racist report denies systemic and institutional racism within the UK, and of course that was established to some degree by the Macpherson report following the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Furthermore, it ignores that the UK's internationally and historically instigating and maintaining structural and global racism. So I don't want to bore you with the stats because Black people, you do not have to tell Black people that racism is vamping up. But this is an interesting stat. We normally think of the United States as segregated. I'm always talking to people who know, so it's a wonderful moment for me because sometimes you're doing these things that people don't know. But everybody here knows, it's just wonderful. In Britain, there's a huge amount of segregation, but it's no longer signposted by various laws. Therefore, it will be difficult for most whites to see racial discrimination as a reality and problem. So there is segregation in the UK, but it's not signposted like it is in the United States. It's less visible. And certainly, I've been a school teacher for 20 years, it's the same. All right? There's racial segregation all over the country. Now, one of our amazing scholars, Charles Mills, Caribbean scholar who lived in the United States, he explained that historically a lot of whites tend to measure how well they are doing in life in relation to Black people. He called this intrinsically relational. If they are higher than Blacks on the social economic ladder, it is this that seems important to them. It seems impossible to get some whites to reject the perception. So that is an issue, particularly if we're thinking in terms of allyship. In the UK, US Caribbean, right, one of the concepts in my book is called racial illiteracy. So in the UK, in the US, Caribbean and Africa, most Black people and their children, regardless of their social economic status, are what the handbook calls racially illiterate. Okay? This is what the handbook calls it. It's not a disparaging term. It's a term that talks to the reality of what we know since we're educated in the system. So, there's a term I use, racially illiterate. It doesn't mean you're socially illiterate, it doesn't mean you're economically illiterate, but race, in matters of race and racism, and I don't mean this disparagingly, and I'm part of this war part, I argue, and I give evidence in my book, that we are racially illiterate as a people. Racially. What do I mean by this? What are some of the key aspects of racial illiteracy? Well, many Black people do not properly understand race and racism, e.g. race as central to the making of the modern world, and as a project of colonial rule, confusing racism for ethnic conflict, bias or prejudice, Black on Black violence with claims that Black people are racist as well, and not really understanding this thing called systems of racism as being in existence. And I know in the Black community there's this superficial argument over words and whatever, whether it's white supremacy and white domination. All that stuff is an act of racial illiteracy. Okay? Let's go on to the next problem. The racially illiterate person has little and fragmented knowledge of the Black experience. What do I mean by that? A sequential and basic study of Black modern history. Sequentially. So you understand, oh, we went from this to this to this to this. Oh, we went from the civil rights to Black Power movement, and we have a sequential understanding of that and how it relates to the UK as well. And many of us lack that. They learn bits and pieces of knowledge as they go along, which will take a lifetime, and most of it's incorrect, twisted and misleading, and by then it might be too late. So with most of us, when we leave school, we're picking knowledge up, okay, bits and pieces as we go along. And nobody in this room, nobody, including me, had any race education if we were born in this country or the Caribbean. There is no race education for black people. So we are actually picking it up as we go along. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can say, yes, my thinking's changed. I can see this more clearly than I did 10 years ago. All right, so this picking it up as we go along is not good enough. We haven't got time to pick it up as we go along. This is what I'm trying to say. Right, next thing, they are unable to pass proper black knowledge and liberation onto their children beyond the superficial. What's the superficial? Oh, black people, we have a history of slavery. Oh, there's lots of racism around. Oh, so black people don't like us. That's superficial. Okay? It's surface level. We need a deeper understanding of the black experience. Okay? Because we are not passing it on to our children, because we don't know the situation. So we pass on what we know, which may be incorrect, because we didn't have any education, okay? Race education. Right, let's move on to the next point. There's some more examples here. We do that last one? Yeah, good. Right, then. Should be continued. Right, racial illiteracy continued. What have we got next? A racially illiterate person, black person, generally is unaware of the forces of white supremacy. If you're tripping out over that word, change it to white domination. We haven't got time for that. You know what it is. These terms are irrelevant. We are catching hell. Don't worry about whether you want to call it white supremacy or white domination. We know we're not inferior. That's all that matters. We haven't got time to play games over words. That's what the racist Europeans do. Right, the practice of racelessness. Nobody in this room is doing this. But lots of black people who are, let's say their social economic status might be better than many of us in this room. Okay? And I meet them all the time in schools. We'll do questions at the end, I promise. Okay? I meet them at school. They're educated blacks, often bourgeois. They practice racelessness. What is racelessness? A motivated attempt to ignore race as a significant factor in one's life. In other words, I say, they've got their house, they've got their car, they've got their Venetian blinds, so what are you talking about? Everything's fine. It's deep selfishness as well. But it's racelessness. Race doesn't mean anything. I've got everything. I'm liberated because I've got my house, car, and Venetian blinds. Right. They have a limited understanding of the determinants of whiteness. Whiteness is a study at university. You can study that. You're not studying fish and chips or anything like that. You're studying whiteness as a political system. Okay? The determination of whiteness. In other words, a simple way of looking at that, to understand how white attitudes impact on racism. And the psychology of racism as an important factor in one's life. We have a lot of black people who understand racism without the psychology. Big mistake. Big mistake. Most of you know about Fanon, one of our French activists, Frantz Fanon. He was right at the forefront of black liberation. He was out there fighting. But he brought psychoanalytic discussions into racism. In fact, he's shown quite clearly that you don't understand racism unless you're prepared to look at the psychology of it as well. And it's the psychology of it that many racist Europeans get one up on us, because we don't understand the psychology of racism. What's next? They seek, these are the racially illiterate person, seeks deliberately to develop their personality and life in the interest of white power and domination of blacks and other non-whites. We see lots of blacks doing that. Oh, well, we are not much of the people, so let me develop my life and personality. You see? And we have a lot of black people in the media who are really celebrities pretending to be activists. There's a problem with that. It's quite complex, okay? It's quite complex. Are you a celebrity or you're an activist? It's quite complex. I don't have the answers, but it's something we need to look at, okay? But we mustn't, a racially illiterate person develops their personality in the interest of white power, okay? Because we think that's what we should do. Let's move on. Got that there. So, an important epistemological question. One thing about knowledge, it's just a bunch of words, brothers and sisters, that's all it is. Okay? Epistemology is knowledge production. That's all that is. Where did you get your knowledge? Where did it come from? Who's dispensating that knowledge? Where did the knowledge come from? The person who gave you the knowledge. That's the epistemology. Is all knowledge value free? This is epistemology. An important epistemological question of epistemology: when did you receive your race education? Now, I've been touring this book since last year, Black History Month. I went to Leeds, I went to Bristol, I went to Manchester, and so on. And you meet various audiences, and some audiences try to pretend they got their race education. Some. They got it. They left school and they got it. That's called delusion of the mind. You did not get any race education. Some people do this. Oh, of course, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm from the Caribbean, and we are the majority. So I must have got some relative education from the collective consciousness of all black people. Another deluded point. In other words, I don't know what's better, to be born in a previous slave plantation or the heart of empire. I don't know what's best. Okay? They're both the same thing. Okay? So you cannot escape this question. When did you receive your race education? Because you didn't get it in the United States, you didn't get it in the Caribbean, and you most certainly didn't get it in the UK. That's the question. So, for a detailed explanation of racial illiteracy, if you go to my website, I've got an article called Genealogy. Genealogy just means one thing to the next, how it delivers itself. The genealogy of the racially illiterate. When I wrote my book, I didn't bring my copy up. When I wrote my book, you can't get it all in. So you have to leave some things out. But the things that are left out on the website. So there's a whole chapter on racial illiteracy, okay? And you can check that on my website at www.theracismhandbook.com. Right, so where are we next? So introduce. This is why we need the Racism Handbook. I've spoken to you about the fact that we have racism vamped up and that we are, as a people, racially illiterate. But it is on a spectrum. So really, we need to look at ourselves. Oh, by the way, on the quiet, she wrote that book. She just pretended. Anyway, the Racism Handbook. Let's check it out. Is there anything in there for us? Right, let's think about the title. Everybody okay? Yeah. You're not bored? No. Have I bored you to tears? No. Wonderful. Are you enjoying it so far? Oh, I love black people. They're so brilliant. Okay. In terms of our history, global migration and human anthropology, black and African people have a global presence. Scobie, 2001. We have a global presence on planet Earth. Therefore, global racism, listen to what I just said. Global racism cannot be explained by use of the term Afrophobia. We must account for the genocide, for example, of Tasmanians and other oppressed black peoples around the globe, listen to this bit, who are geopolitically are not, in the modern sense, African. But we know everybody, all black people came from Africa. So the Tasmanians politically are not African, anthropologically they were. And that's why the title of my book is People Classified as Black. Once you're classified as black, that is a particular anti-black racism you're going to catch. All right, so we don't get mixed up about words. We dominate the word language. We're not just going to call racism Afrophobia, because it's spreading out the whole planet, and we need to fix the whole planet. All right, so it's not just Afrophobia. Afrophobia is a phobia of African people. That is most certainly going on. But that doesn't tell you the whole of what is going on. It tells you a good chunk, but not all of it. So the term classified as black is a racial category that applies to all people whom the elite white Europeans have classified as black, inferior, and viewed as sub-persons. So I could have said the book for African people, but that doesn't cover the whole of the planetary racism, which is what we have. This whole planet, okay, is run by race, okay? And anti-black racism is planetary. Unless you want to go up into the stars, you might find something up there that isn't. Good luck with that. Right. The title, A Guide to How Racism Really Works, is just an inference to European epistemology, dominating our interpretation. How does racism really work? Remember, we didn't get any race education. We didn't get any, and we were picking it up when we finished our school education as we were going along. Okay? So, A Guide to How It Really Works suggests that we should look at our own epistemology, our own knowledge production. So what's the purpose of the Racism Handbook? The Racism Handbook is a framework for black and African liberation from racial oppression and an aid to black studies, a combined anti-racism and black studies book. So it's both. It's both a black studies book and an anti-racist book. I do not compare this book to the breadth and analysis in Malala Karenga's Introduction to Black Studies, yet the handbook is an attempt to present black people a different and simplified outline of it through the lens of anti-racist talk and written works, which we call discourse. Okay, so this is Malala Karenga's book. I don't know if anybody knows that. Hands up who've seen this book. You've seen that book. Where did you see it?
Some sort of Black History Studies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I totally believe you. I totally believe, because we had a wonderful chat earlier. So thank you so much. Now look, here's my one, which is simplified, because the introduction to Black Studies is very dense, very difficult. Okay, you have to work through it. It's very difficult. This is an issue. And I'm a school teacher. There's no point us having knowledge, and then you and I have got knowledge, and we just keep bouncing our knowledge off each other, and everybody else is excluded. We're not going to be liberated like that. We all got to get on the same page. So this book is great in the academies, which is the universities, okay? Because that's a struggle in there as well, and I can talk about that later. We are struggling in there, and we're fighting racism there, but you need black studies on the street. And there it is, the Racism Handbook for People Classified as Black. Now, what is Black Studies? Black Studies is more than Black history. A lot of people get them confused. Okay? What's the difference? We've got 5 bullet points there. Interdisciplinary approach. All that means is Black Studies adopts this approach to be more holistic, so it doesn't limit itself to the historical perspectives. if you're studying black history, but includes other disciplines. The black people, we love black history. We love it because it reminds us of who we were, where we came from. That's great. And I remember a friend of mine I knew in the 90s who was studying black history, and I met him 2 months ago, and he rushed up to me, he hadn't seen me for a while, and first he says, yes, we built the pyramids. Exactly where I last left him. Exactly where I last left him. You see, once you've got the knowledge that you built the pyramids, that doesn't pay your rent. It builds your character. It builds your character to know that you come from something. But we have to move beyond that. The African is past, future, and present, but locked into talking about a pyramid forever. We built that. Let's move on. We can look at sociology. We look at sociology in literature, political science, psychology. Why do we do that? So we get a holistic understanding of the black experience. Black studies focuses on the past, present, future. It emphasizes the present and the future by examining current issues and explores potential solutions to our liberation. Okay? You studying the Temple of Set I is wonderful. Okay, that's beautiful. Absolute beautiful. I can't put it in words. But we're going to need more than knowing about the Temple of Set I if we're going to get out of this hellhole that we're in. Okay? Next, Black Studies emphasizes activism by advocating for social justice and racial equality. Black Studies is a global perspective. It studies the experiences of black people around the world, the diaspora. The UK, the rest of Western and Eastern Europe, particularly France and Germany. We don't know much about what's going on in the others because the information is not filtering through so much. Well, not a lot of stuff isn't being written, I mean. And then, of course, we've got the Caribbean, and then we've got Africa. And Black Studies will cover all of that. Its focus isn't on a black experience from history, it's a black experience in all those different fields: sociology, literature, political science, economics, race, class, and gender, and so on. Okay? For a detailed explanation of Black Studies, simplified, if you go to my YouTube channel, www.youtube.com, The Black Hand and Press, there's a wonderful lecture that I did at the Arts Centre, Achieving Black Consciousness Through Our Collective Knowledge, which is Black History, Black Studies. Okay, so that's there for you. So, what is the purpose of the handbook? The Racism Handbook is a front. Oh, I think you did that. Have I gone? I think I put forward there. Okay, so I did that. Which direction am I going? Okay, we did that. Because I'm working at the side, you see, that's the problem. Right, so let's have a look at the content. Right, so you've got introduction, the reality of racism. And you might think, well, of course, I know what racism is, I know what the reality of racism is. But that's a quite interesting chapter because a lot of black people don't accept the racism that we're getting. Maybe that doesn't apply to anybody in this room, but I can tell you that a lot of black people do not accept the reality of racism. What that means is the psychology of racism is in play here. It's a mechanism. We use mechanisms to help us to cope with the racism. We use mechanisms, and one of the mechanisms is to pretend that racism is something else. That's a mechanism. Okay, so race, the reality of racism, really important. Then these three chapters, now all these four need to be read together. What is race? What is racism? Charles Darwin on race. You read all those three together, and then the rest you can read in any order. Now, when I did research for this book, I didn't just wake up in the morning and read the book. I'll get bits, knowledge here, bits. I'll piece it together. No, this is what I think. No way. I don't do that to black people. This book is academic, simplified, That made it harder to do, much harder to do, because academic discourse is drawn out. So you have to find ways of simplifying it. But I know black people. I know how black people work, because I'm one as well. So I had to simplify it, but yet still keep it academic. So this is an academic book. It's not my experience of racism, which is what a lot of black people write. It's not my experience of racism. It's a black studies book. It's not my experience of racism. It's the global experience of racism. It's black studies. So, when I did some research, I did a thing called qualitative research. Another big stupid word. All it means is you interview people and you find out what they believe, how much they understand. Black people, when you ask black people what is racism, you get a fairly decent answer. Now when you ask them what is race, you get an incredibly fragmented answer. Black people, we don't really understand what is race. We don't understand race. We have our own concept of it to survive, but we need to understand it, to deconstruct it, to unpick it. We have to understand it. I was doing a lecture somewhere, I won't say where, and I was talking about this, and because I'm deconstructing race, the audience was thinking that I'm reinforcing racism, and I'm laughing, because I'm not. I'm deconstructing it. Because once you deconstruct it, then you can do something with it. We shouldn't just jump from concept to concept. Oh, people are saying this, let me say that. People are saying this, let me say that. You've got to move beyond that. Charles Darwin on race. I know for a fact that most black people do not know that this guy here, Charles Darwin, is part of racism. If he didn't exist on this planet, you will be getting a different level of racism today. He's one of the key players in racism, which the system sweeps under the carpet, but it's in the book for you to fully understand. So, those 4 chapters need to be read in order. Then you have the slave trade, a corrective. Now there's huge amounts of books on the slave trade, huge amounts of books. So what does my chapter do? My chapter basically looks at all the lies, and it corrects the lies. There's loads of black people who've written brilliant books on slavery. They are sourced in this book at the back, and all I do in my chapter is undo all the lies. Because some black people are pushing lies and don't know they're pushing it. Okay? So, it's a corrective. Then we have the perennial debate that we have as black people. Reparations, will we ever receive it? And this is kind of a hotbed subject for some black people. Some black people get upset if you say, we might not receive it. They take offence. We've got to be able to have discussions among ourselves. We have different views on that. All right, so that chapter just basically explains reparations and all the current debates and the issues that surround it. Racism and Christianity, very difficult chapter to write, and I was going to exclude it from the book. But a friend of mine, who I've known since the 90s, she said to me, she's a Christian, she goes to church and she's doing all that. And she said to me, no, you should include it. And I said, but you're not going to read it. She said, no, but deep down in my heart, maybe I won't read it, but you should do it. And I think that was like the ancestors talking to her, So she said, you must write about racism and Christianity. So I have. And racism in Christianity. Then, African composite religion. Again, you get black people in the grassroots community tripping out on the word religion. Tripping out on it. But it's just a word that isn't even an African word. If a black person says, I'm using the word religion this way, that's it, finished. They haven't got time to trip out on words that we didn't create. They haven't got time for that. African composite religion is basically a discussion on African spirituality. That's what that is. A lot of black people have a fragmented understanding of that. It's a good chapter. You can really get your head around some of the key concepts. Racialisation of mixed black and white race people, very important chapter. If you know anything about mixed black and white race people, you'd know that anywhere in the Caribbean there's been an incredible history with, they were called all sorts of things, mulattoes, negative racial epithets, and so on. But we have a significant history with mixed race people, and they get, in my understanding, differential racism, but they get racism. They absolutely get racism. But because of the colour-coded aspects of racism, it often comes at them from a twisted angle. They're still getting racism, but because of their light skin, it's differential. So it's really important, that chapter. Self-help books. Snake oil, anti-black development. I'm really sorry. I don't want to offend any black person. Okay? But in the 80s, I had maybe 30, 40, I've given them all away now, books on self-help. A lot of black people think that they can walk into a bookshop, okay, anywhere, and go to the shelf called self-help, and it says, how to get your mind on track. And you put it down, and you buy it. And the question is, what mind? What mind are you talking about? Why are you making the assumption that there is one mind on planet Earth? Okay, so there's no one in this room from Polynesia. Anyone from Polynesia? No. So no one in this room has the psychology of a Polynesian. Okay, so you don't just go into a bookshop and pull a book down. 7 ways to develop the mind. What mind? And the mind, ready, is European mind. That's what that is. So you can't do that. You can, but that's not liberation. You're being miseducated, in the words of Carter G. Woodson. So, self-help books, snake oil. Snake oil. Oh, it's oil, it's lovely, you put it on your skin. But no, it's snake oil. Black, self-help books, the majority of them are toxic for black people. And I'll stick to that, I don't care what hassle I get. Howard Dean Johnson said it, okay, I don't know. Spread it around the black community, I don't care. Self-help books are toxic for black people. That's absolutely fine. Right, let's move on to the next. Now, conclusion, self-determination, okay, a solution to the global system. And this is a part of what black people, we actually know that. It's an easy chapter to write. We know that we have to get on with each other to end racism. Our problem is, as Francis Press Wilson showed us, it's our relationship to each other and others. And once we get our relationship properly balanced, rational, loving, kindness and fair, then we go some way to developing systems that break up racism. But at the moment, we don't even trust each other. Black people don't trust the other black person. We have this innate fear of the black person, and we're black ourselves. We don't trust each other. And then, of course, there's dysfunctional black behaviours. It's really hard sometimes. You just get bombarded with constant dysfunctional black behaviours. And many blacks, well, I'll just keep away from black people then. You see? And that's not going to solve the problem. So we have to know what the issue is. Okay? And this chapter just lays out what you already know. You already know it. But it lays it out really clearly. So I think we need a little break, and then we'll do the second half of it. Is that all right? Yeah. All right, so we'll leave it there. We'll have 5 minutes break, and then we'll carry on. All right? Thank you so much so far. I need to break this.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good.
Good.
The line is the same. Yeah.
Okay, folks, I've just got another 7 minutes or so, okay, and then we will wrap it up, okay? Yeah, and we go into questions, yeah. Just let me do this little bit for you, and then you can ask me questions. So, the Racism Handbook, okay, has one of its major features is the adaptive rules of racial communication. All right. So that's at the back of the book. I present 50 adaptive rules, 40 of which are presented in the following. So what is it? The objective is to aggregate knowledge presented in the handbook social action. Some of these rules you may instinctively know. Okay? So, who is this person here? Anybody knows? Okay, well he said, listen to this carefully folks, the white race has a system of method, a code of ethics laid down to go by, a philosophy to set creed to guide his life. So what I have are 40 adaptive rules in the Racism Handbook, all right, designed to help us in our communication. It's also based on Frances Cress Welsing, okay? In her book, she suggested that while black people are oppressed in a global system, we need to use behaviour formations that codify our behaviour, okay? And finally, does anybody recognise this chap? No. This is Derrick Bell. After we had the civil rights movement in the United States, his job was to see whether the schools were going to be desegregated. And within 5 years, it all became go back to desegregation. Okay, so then he said that we need to fashion a philosophy that matches out the dangers that we have. He wrote this famous book called The Permanence of Racism in the United States and the rest of the world. So here are some of my adaptive rules. At the back of the book, never take whites or Asians at face value, get to know them first. No one is able to take anyone at face value in the global system of racism. A person classified as black, most whites see you and respond to you as black, a subordinated person, consciously or unconsciously. Accordingly, race is always present. Okay? So, there are some adaptive rules, and my book is available. Really? Okay, someone tell me. Is it all right? Okay, good. All right, thank you so much. All right, because I was speeding through that. So, I have adaptive rules in the book. Remember I said that the book is a black studies guide, okay, and an anti-racist book. So, at the back of the book, you have the adaptive rules of racial communication that was based on, let's just go back because I sped through that. When you come to Garvey, you don't speed through that, but I thought that's coming. Right, so that's what Garvey said. Okay? He said that the white race has a method, a code of ethics laid down to go by as a philosophy, a set of creed in its life. Okay? So I created 40 adaptive rules of racial communication. Okay? These adaptive rules are designed to protect us within our communications and social intercourse with people in our daily lives. Some of them may be challenging and provocative, yet they are informed by the knowledge of our collective black history, black studies, and race communications. And then, of course, it's also based on, where do I get the analysis? The objective of the adaptive rules at the back of my book is to aggregate, put together the knowledge presented in the handbook to social action. Okay? And some of these rules you may instinctively know. They are carefully presented and constructed based on racial realism. Okay? These rules are adaptive. This means that your personal situation may require that you adjust and change these rules to fit your circumstance. Garvey suggested that racial prejudice will not be overcome by legislation alone. The implication is that we should also apply ourselves to behavioural strategies. In a sense, these methods represent the aspect that Martin Luther King did, which was direct action. The ultimate purpose of the adaptive rules is to develop racial literacy, and that's racial awareness leading to consciousness. So, that's my racial. I've got some definitions of racism. I think it's important that we have a definition of racism. Okay, and this is my definitions of racism based on the book, Our Collective Knowledge. A worldwide social, political, economic and cultural system of oppression and disadvantage based on a concept of race in which people who have classified themselves as white since the 17th century now assume a position of global racial dominance over those whom they classified as black and peoples of colour. The system is interconnected and maintained through structural and institutional powers in which racist practice subsumes social class and gender inequalities, and that no other racial group has been subjected to more ideological and systemic oppression of racism than the group classified as black, and that racism will never end unless the people classified as black end systems of racism. So that is a definition of racism that comes from our own epistemology. Okay, and then we have different, I broke down some of the chapters for you, so we don't need to go into all of those, which is great. But I just want to read this one. What is race? This chapter gives an outline of the historical development of the idea and concept of race and its creation. It shows that essentially the modern concept of race is racism. Furthermore, that it wasn't until the 1930s that the word race developed into the word racism. In the ancient and medieval period, or even earlier forms of tribal organisation, the categorisation of humanity into races did not exist. It shows that it was elite Europeans in the modern period who initially ordered humanity into master and slave races. Okay? Thus, the European modern race creates racism. The chapter explains the subsequent meaning of racialisation, skin colour terminology such as black, white, red, yellow, brown, and people of colour. Moreover, it explores how race is colour-coded. It explains how race correlates to the structuration of racism in white societies. It also shows the major distinctions between race and ethnicity. All right? So I think that is it, brothers and sisters. And if you want to get the book, I've got some on my table there. They're still there. They better be there. Let's have a look. Any questions now, brothers and sisters? Any questions? Go ahead, please. Let me just get to the last slide. and we'll take some questions. 1 second, please. Okay, so that was the last slide there. And we'll go to the... Okay, and I'll just leave that on the board so you can see that. Right, any questions? Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah, microphone. Yes, you know, I was told about, you know, slavery when I was in secondary school, and you know about who I am, myself, told about Black history in secondary school. But one thing I didn't know was racism and race. Like, because when I'm outside of school, I never talk about racism or experience racism. It's like I'm kind of like creating into other people. Like I've been taught like love is love or trying to love everyone else, but when I just don't see, you know, when it comes to racism, it's like I get stuck in the face. I feel like maybe I've been blind like that. I don't know why the education don't really talk about, you know, racism. Like I'm very taught about slavery, but when it comes to racism, it's like I don't really acknowledge it more, but it just kind of blindly, like I just, you know, racism is like the education don't really teach us that, you know.
Right, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. So there you have it, okay? He's basically saying, right, that when he's at school there's no race education. Now, by the way, you said that you're not catching racism, you are, okay? Because racism is not just individual, all right? So if you're, I mean, when I go into school, I work in a, you know, an institution, it's a school. Nobody comes up to me and calls me the N-word. I'm still catching racism. So don't, not you, but we mustn't be bourgeois, all right? Because nobody's coming up to me calling me the N-word, I'm not catching racism. That's not what you're saying, I know. But we are catching racism. Even the bourgeois black is catching racism, okay? The difference is they pretend, like Morgan Freeman. If Morgan Freeman was okay with all these millions, he wouldn't be on television saying, you stop calling him black, I'll stop calling him white. He wouldn't be doing all that. Because obviously when he goes to these millionaire parties, people are obviously being racist towards him and saying, you can't say anything, Morgan, because you've got more money than me. So everybody on earth who is black is suffering from anti-black racism. And those of us who say they're not, that's a coping mechanism. They're deluded. Okay? Any other questions, please?
I would like to know, from 1814, white people were in slavery as well. Do you know that?
Well, would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, I would like to know.
Okay. All right. Now, there is oppression all over the planet. Okay? At the top of this, that's a beautiful question. That's an excellent question. I'll tell you why we need to sort that question out. Because that question is holding a lot of black people back. Because racist whites are using that question to confuse us. So listen carefully to the answer now. Okay? At the top of this presentation, I said we should not just use Afrophobia. Didn't I say that? I said if we're going to talk about racism, we need to see it as global. Some people are not African, they're still catching racism. Now, there is oppression on planet Earth. Okay? Lots of people are getting it in relative measure. Okay? Whites tend to have had most of their oppression, systemic structural oppression, in the 19th century. Okay? Today, there's no structural systems of oppression for white people. But to say that they didn't get any, and Diane Abbott did that and she got roasted, that was a racially illiterate thing of her to say. And respectfully, as much as I respect her as a human, she's racially illiterate, because that's not correct. Okay? Lots of people on the planet get oppression. Now, this is the point, which is whether they're going to try to confuse you. Alright? There is nothing on planet Earth equal to anti-black racism. Okay? So black people are not saying, those of us who are studying, we're not saying we're the only one who gets racism. We're not saying that. But no one is getting racism like the people classified as black. Now, I didn't say, I said people classified as black. And if you're classified as black, you're going to get anti-black racism. And you might not even think you're black. Some Indians don't think they're black, but everybody thinks they're black. They're black. Once the system makes you black, it's something that you do, you're black. Okay? It's imputed to you. It's on the body, as Fanon said. Fanon had multiple ideas. He had epidermalization, which is like it's on the skin. Inferiority is on the skin. He had another concept called negrophobic genesis. Okay? Which is basically, and there's nothing you can do about anti-blackness. It's on you. So in other words, when he was talking to Sartre, this is another philosopher, a white French philosopher at the time, he said the Jew, okay, is a threat, but he has to do Jewishness to be a threat. He has to be a Jew. He has to practice Jewishness. The black, so in other words, the Jew is a threat conceptually. He has to do Jewish things. The black, listen carefully, is a threat corporally. This is what Fanon said. Corporally means it's on you. And so many blacks, why do we have to turn driving by black? That is exactly what Fanon's explaining. Blackness is on you. Whether you're bourgeois or whatever, it's on you. Bourgeois are playing the game because they're in white spaces and they're slightly demented. Putting it lightly, I'm not trying to offend anybody. But my point is, I hope that's answered your question. Black people shouldn't go around saying there's no oppression on planet Earth but us. That's not correct. Look what's happening in Palestine. There's lots of oppression on the planet. But do not let anyone on Earth tell you what your oppression is. Because notice we can't tell them what their oppression is. You don't tell Jewish people what their oppression is. Okay? They've studied it for hundreds of years, so don't you dare tell black people what our oppression is. Our oppression is global anti-blackness. I'll come to you in just a second. So you're correct. There was at some point where whites were slaves. Just to add a little bit of slavery to it, it wasn't commercialized. Okay, it was domestic. You can see that in history. Lots of back in the Middle Ages, you had lots of white women who were domestic slaves. Yeah, that's going on, without a doubt. Ours was commercialized. Ours was commercialized. Ours, okay, almost kick-started the Industrial Revolution. You need to read Walter Rodney. Okay? So we are not saying, a very good question, yes. And get that into your heads, brothers, because people will use that to say you don't know what you're talking about. And once you trip up and you don't know what you're talking about, the conversation's over. Okay? Know what you are talking about. Be scientific when you talk about racism. Otherwise, people will tell you what your story is. No man on earth can tell me my story. Not going to happen. Okay? Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Who's next? Go ahead. No, don't give a big speech because we've got to get other people in. Yeah, go ahead.
What's a big speech anyway?
Well, we'll know it when we hear it.
All right. You said your statement is that racism will never end until we end the system of racism. Am I right? Correct?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Dr. Scobie, and I know most people are familiar with Dr. Scobie, Edward Scobie. In my 20s, I used to go to City College after work to the Black Studies department. We were learning the systematic oppressions of racism and Black Studies department in City College. The problem is, to attack the system of racism, we as Black people worldwide need to be systematic. And we're not systematic in the approach to the system of racism. But since you don't want a long speech, I'll leave it at that. What you
That's brilliant, what you just said. Give him a round of applause. Could I have that water, please? Can someone bring that water over for me?
Just a quick one.
Can I have that water? Yes, please. I really need it. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a question of, is there a difference between...
Listen to him, please. Quiet, just a second, sir. Because we need to learn from each other. We need to learn from each other. Okay? Because I don't know what this elder's going to tell me. We need to listen carefully.
No, I want to know the difference between oppression and suppression.
Oppression and suppression.
Yeah, is there a difference?
Right. Okay, let me answer that.
There is.
Yeah, it's context. Well, who wants to answer the question? Go on then. Right, okay. I forgot what I said. It's a language issue. It's the context. Okay? But then oppression, well, what context? I mean, I could compress this bottle. What context? If you're talking about racism, okay, and you can suppress people's attitudes without being violent, and you can say, I'm suppressing that person's attitude. So I'm
not comparing white people and black people, right? Because I grew up in this country and I know for a fact, right? Take for instance, look at the job. Say I'm a qualified engineer, yeah?
Yeah.
And I go for a job, right? I can feel, I know the racism is there, and they said, well, they make about 10 excuses for me. A white boy come along, right? And they said there's no job. But when situation arises, right, the white boy get uplifted because he was, and he complained. But to me, he was just suppressed for a period of time. But I was told, my friend and I was totally oppressed, never going to rise. That's what I'm saying.
Wonderful. I think you're totally entitled to use the word suppression like that. We can use the English language that fits our situation. Okay? So if you want to make a distinction between oppression and suppression in that context, does anybody have a problem with that? Because I don't. Well done. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Thank you for your making clear about racism. I've just got a couple of short points to make. In one of the chapters of your book, you talk about self-help being, I can't remember the term you used.
Toxic for black people.
Toxic for black people, thank you. And as you said that, I was thinking about some of the top books, some of the things that occupy, not the young people in particular, and some of the things I've even read myself. So there's a movement towards what they call shadow work. Most people have heard of the Stephen Covey 7 Habits. There's also the one called Love Languages. There's a whole load of YouTube things like Stephen Bartlett's and all the rest of it. Are you saying that a lot of these things are just, as you said, toxic for black people, they're not useful for black people? Is toxic the same as not useful, or you're saying that there's a limitation in what they can offer, or are they misguiding black people? What are you saying specifically?
Okay, very good question, very good question. Toxic is dangerous because it can kill you. So, look, there's bound to be a self-help book written by a black person, which is fine. I'm not denying that. There might even be one written by a white person. Unlikely. What I'm talking about here is that word we mentioned earlier, epistemology. Epistemology is knowledge production. You have your knowledge production, someone else has theirs. There is black knowledge production and European knowledge production, vying on the planet. That's what it is. So when you go to a self-help bookshop to explain the mind, if you want to adjust your mind to the European mind, knock yourself out. But you can't tell me that you're studying the African mind. Does that make sense? If I haven't answered your question, you should say, I don't know what you mean. What I'm trying to say is, knowledge is not value free. You can't just walk into a bookshop and go, oh, how to fix the mind, and pull it down off the shelf. The mind they're referring to is the European mind. So all the stuff it's telling you to do to fix your mind is not for your mind. You don't have the mind of an Asian, you don't have the mind of a Polynesian. You don't have that mind. Your mind is your psychology based on your history. Right.
So are you also saying that these self-help books are really too general? Because
they're not general.
No one that they're European.
But they're not.
Or because each one of them are more about just because we're all individuals.
They're not. No, we're not. No. Well, let me answer that question. They're not general. They're just about the European mind. How is that general? It's not general. When you go to a bookshop and it says how to fix your mind, okay, that's not general. They're basing it on their mind. Now, if you wrote 100 books called How to Fix the Mind and shoved it into European laps, they'll kick it away. So I'll come to you just a second. Right? So my point is, sister, what I'm trying to say is, it's not that it's general, it's that it comes from a different epistemology. It's not our knowledge. If you want to know your mind and how to get the best out of your mind, you need to study the psychology of your mind. Your mind goes back to your history. An Asian mind goes back to Asian history. A Polynesian mind goes back to Polynesian. The European is being Eurocentric because he wants to make money. So it's not that it's general, it's toxic. You need a book. Now look, let me recommend Naam Akbar, The Psychology of the Mind. He's not talking about a Polynesian mind. He's talking about your mind. And he's in that paradigm of mind. That's why when I talk to you about the Racism Handbook, right? When you open the pages, guess what? It's a vibration. You're going to feel my mind to your mind. Do you understand? That's why we've got to stop saying, oh, we've got to reach our youngsters by YouTube clips. You do not get a vibration from a YouTube clip. If you want to feel Ben Yochanan or Dr. Henry Clark, you need to buy his book, sit on a sofa, open the book, and the vibration of his mind is going to enter your mind. You put that into a YouTube clip, you're coming through all sorts of technology that is not your... Okay? So I'm a school teacher, and we've got to reach children, we've got to meet them where they are. Yeah, you can meet them where they are, and I'm going to meet my children where my children are, and my children are African. Okay? So you're playing a game there. If you can't play a game, you can play a game with African people, but you can't play a game with African people all of the time. And some of us don't want to be bourgeois. Some of us don't want to be. Okay? So you're wasting your time. Okay? So it's not the term that you used. What was the term you used? You said, is it... Not to do with general. It's to do with the spirituality of your mind. There are endless books, black people spending endless money writing books about the mind, and you go into W.H. Smith and pull down a book written for Europeans. That's not good. That's not good. In this book, it's got nothing but black vibrations from top to bottom. And it will fit with your vibration. That's what I'm talking about. What do you want to say something?
I had 2 points to make. That was my first point. My final short point is what I felt since being studying black studies, been doing for a while now, is that part of the road ahead, part of the issue I find is that a lot of people come into this study because they've been sort of European educated, or start studying black studies, and they come across something that kind of reminds them that there doesn't seem to be as much development as you'd hope. So, if I be specific, I've been to black studies events and experienced the element of what I would call anti-blackism from people who purport to be supporting anti-blackness. So that's why I think there's a personal and a bigger issue that kind of puts people off, almost sends you into a sense of apathy.
Right,
when you
okay.
experience that.
All right, firstly, there's no anti-blackism. That doesn't exist. What you have, we don't have anti-black. We don't have that. Remember, words. We own the words, okay? We don't have anti-blackness, okay? I don't have anti-black against you. What I may have is conflict. We're conflicted. We have different views. Like I'm not a Marxist, for example.
Oh, it might just be
Yeah,
an attack
but-
on,
no, but what-
on how I look.
No, just a second. Black people are in trauma. We're traumatized people, okay? We've got to sort out our behaviours. When you go into a meeting and you don't get the behaviour you want, it's not racism. It's called black people not behaving properly with black people. It's got nothing to do with race. It's not racism. If I come down on this platform and I mistreat you and, oh, the book's £100 for you, and that's not racism. It's me mistreating you. Black people mistreat other black people because we have a bad history. We're oppressed. But the last thing you need to do is call it racism around our children, and our children grow up saying, yeah, black people can be racist. We're not racist to each other. We don't do any of that. We have ethnic conflict. We have black on black violence in the service of white supremacy. Amos Wilson. Okay? We have conflicts with each other. We don't have racism. No such thing as racism against you and I. We're the same race. Okay? We have conflicts. Now, in this room here, according to race, it's just a bunch of black people. Okay? And according to some racists, well, I better not, because this is going on YouTube. my point is, they can call us all sorts of things. But in this room, there's lots of ethnic groups, right in this room. There's multiple ethnic groups in this room. And we may have our differences, but nothing to do with racism. Don't call it racism, because you're feeding the white supremacy, white domination, if you get upset with that term, you're feeding into the... I'll use the word you want, okay? As long as you don't get upset. No, I'm only joking. So, you see where I'm coming from? Okay? Not just changing the language, I'm telling you for a fact that we have our own epistemology. You are an African woman of African descent. Your mind is based on your history. Your mind is not based on a European history. You go into a shop, you pull a book down from the shelf telling you how your mind works. Unless it says African in neon lights, you're being miseducated.
That really covers almost every single book.
Did it pick that up?
Yeah, it did.
So that almost literally covers every single book you buy, because most books don't have African to start with. If you're going to buy any book, if it doesn't say African, you're not going to get an African.
Right, let me answer that. The great Amos Wilson said, once you become educated in your way, you can read any book on the planet. I can read any book on the planet and Africanize it. You can read anything, and you see it through your lens.
I just want to say, because that's why Steve Biko said, the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor are the minds of the oppressed. Right. So, because if you're picking up any book and reading it in the frame of mind that, oh, this reflects to me, or reflects me, when it doesn't, then...
But you need to read my book, the chapter on self-help books. There's a whole chapter on it, self-help books. Yeah, no, I'm pleased you're asking the question. It's a beautiful question. I'm really pleased that you're asking it. And it's telling me that that's a big issue. I was right to put that in the book. It's a big issue. A lot of black people feel that I can go into a shop, right, and pull a book down from the shelf about the mind and I'm safe. You're not safe. You need a book about yourself. Okay, that's what that's about.
What are you going to put in the book chapter on patriarchy as well? Because that's also seen as an issue in the community.
Well, did you read, when I gave my definition of racism, okay, my definition of racism says that patriarchy for black people, that's not our major problem. It may be for Europeans. The patriarchal system may be a problem for them, okay, according to the way they historically treated their women. Black people, we don't have that paradigm, okay? We don't have it. Now, if you get black women, say, I want to use the European paradigm, that's up to them, okay? They need to study and see what the truth is, okay? They need to study, okay? Your problem is not patriarchy. Your problem is not patriarchy. Your problem...
Not on its own, but it is an issue.
Oh, yeah, there's multiple issues. Well, the issue with who? An issue with who? Issue with who? What black man is oppressing you? Issue with who? You see where I'm coming from? It's not, I think in the United States, because a lot of women are very successful. You've got a massive middle class in the United States of black women who are successful. And a lot of them are in loggerheads with black men. That is going on. Here in the UK, less so. It is an issue, but all we need to do is study. All we need to do is study and it all becomes clear. Patriarchy is not your problem. Okay? It's not really a problem. If you get black people trying to make it a problem, that's because they're studying in the epistemology of Europeans. Okay? Your main oppression, any woman in this room, your main oppression is anti-black racism. Your main oppression isn't patriarchy, it's anti-black racism. Okay, but you don't think...
Patriarchy dominates society though, doesn't it? In terms of politics, patriarchy dominates the environment that we live in.
No, anti-black racism dominates the environment we live in. Anti-black racism dominates the environment that we live in, of which, when you go for a job, okay, the first thing they see is a black woman. You want me to believe that the first thing they see is a woman? You're not going to confuse me with that. The first thing, any black woman goes for a job tomorrow, they see a black woman first. That's what they see first. That is what they see first. Let's not get confused. The first thing you see is a black woman. Then you can do other things. Oh, she's less threatening. She's less threatening. Oh, she's attractive. I might be able to get her. You get all sorts of things, all sorts of dynamics. Okay? It's best to have her than a black man. You get that as well. So there's loads of dynamics, but you can't say that you walk into a room for a job.
I'm aware of global racism, right? I'm very much aware of that. But I'm thinking of the environment and the structure of the environment and how it's male dominated.
It is male dominated by European males. European males are dominating this society. Are black males dominating society? Well, you just put it all down. Black males are not dominating society. We're not. We're not even dominating the United States. We're not. So your oppression from patriarchy is white male. And the black men who are mistreating you, guess what they're doing? Ready? Mistreating you. Mistreating you is not patriarchy. I had to say that to a class the other day. I was teaching a class in school. We were doing a novel, okay, because I teach English. And all the girls put their hand up. Oh, it's patriarchy. Mistreatment of a person is patriarchy is the domination of your life. I control.
Western society.
Yes, but you do not control.
Which I do not control.
Right.
Yeah. Black people don't control.
Exactly. Right. But your oppression is your blackness. That's your main. Now,
I don't disagree.
okay, thank you, sister. My point is this. There are hundreds of black women who walk in this room with beautiful clothes and beautiful houses and beautiful cars with Venetian blinds who will tell you, don't listen to Howard. Don't listen to him. My impression is, well, you think you're going to get the tennis player, what's her name? You think she thinks that her problem's racism? No chance. She thinks her problem, so it's to do with our education. It's to do with the degree to which we're miseducated. Once a black woman gets some data or money, suddenly, oh, my oppression is patriarchy. Okay? And she might bring you into it. I'll give you a job, and you go with her and you get a job, and then you suddenly believe it. Okay, fine. But you're not going to confuse the world of black study. You're wasting your time. Every black woman in this room, your problem is anti-black racism, #1. After that, gender. Yes, of course. But she's a woman, she's inferior. Of course that's going on. But don't get it mixed up. When you're on the slave ships, yeah, the only reason they put the women at the top, all right, is so they can abuse them. Don't get mixed up. Do not get mixed up.
One last question.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I was, bless you all. Now I was explaining, there's 2 books I recommend. One's called The ISIS Papers, which explains the keys to the colours. And there's another book, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called African People, European Holidays, What a Mental Genocide. I believe that book's got 4. Yeah, that's the book that I recommended you. So you can take the shackles off of the mind and enable yourself to find peace. Because once you've found the peace in yourself, you've won before you fight these people, and you mustn't go there and allow them to make you feel inferior. That's, I was born here, didn't it? So I know what it is. No, they believe that if you allow them, they make you feel inferior, but it's your duty to release that thought and create your own feeling.
Thank you so
Look at that book I told you, the one's called African People, European Holidays.
Right.
Genocide.
Beautiful. That is a great book. But what you need is a course. You need a course to take you through the various disciplines. Remember I said on the board, you need a course. This book has got multiple courses in it. Okay? Race, gender, religion, mixed race, class. It takes you through the whole panoply of studies. Any other questions?
This book by Dr. Amos Wilson, called The Development Psychology of the Black Child. And the same with your book, so maybe young people to see the situation with present racism. Because he explains that Cuxima-Zwa girl that's 3 years old, a black boy girl from 3 years old, they understand certain things. And that's very important.
Brilliant book. Absolutely brilliant book. You see, did you hear the book that he just mentioned?
Go ahead.
It was The Psychology of the Black Child. The developmental psychology of the black child. Well, because you're into the mind, aren't you? You're into self-help books. So I'm just... Yeah. The psychology of developmental child, yeah. Any other questions? Where's Jean? Any questions? Or... Right. Okay, well, thank you so much. I don't have many books. Let me just say one thing before we wrap up. You can get the book at www.deepened Books. Okay, you can get it from Deepened Book. You can get it from the Malcom Centre. You can also get it from Waterstones. You can also get it from my website, www.racismhandbook.com. And you can get it from Brother Emmanuel's bookstore, which is the blackbooks.com. All right? Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.
Yeah, give thanks. That was a really powerful presentation. A lot of jewels have been shared. Can we make some noise for Howard Dean Johnson one more time? So, yeah, we keep it going, not really a break, but it's just a time for the Sangomas,